After saving the crown prince, I did not reveal my own name, but instead gave the name of the maid beside me. This servant is named Xi Cui. For in my past life, when the crown prince came to propose marriage, he mistook the maid Xi Cui for me and fell in love with her at first sight. After years of childless marriage in the Eastern Palace, the crown prince comforted me, even bringing in children from collateral branches to raise under my care. Yet they were all bastards born from his illicit affair with Xicui. On the day of my coronation as Empress, Xicui, pregnant, stole my imperial robe and smiled defiantly at me. Does this robe truly suit the servant? Wearing it, I too resemble an empress. In my fury, I ordered her clothes stripped off. Just as I raised my hand to strike, Xiao Ling shoved me off the high platform. I fell, bloodied, into his arms. Panicked, he clutched my hand. I didn't mean to. Xi Cui was wrong, but she is carrying a child. I only wished to protect you from harming her. In this new life, since he harbors deep, secret affection for a servant by my side, I shall grant him his wish, let him take a household slave as his consort. Main text, returning from offering incense at the temple of the guardian nation. Misty mountain fog shrouded the landscape. The same time, the same place. A figure staggered into view, brocade robe stained with blood, collapsing before the carriage. The carriage halted abruptly. Xiyun, the maid who accompanied me to burn incense, gasped softly, "Miss, a young master is injured." Hearing Xiyun's familiar cry, I did not move. In my previous life, upon hearing Xiyun's alarm, I lifted my veil and stepped from the carriage. Using the wound-healing medicine carried in the carriage, I saved him. His face smeared with blood, yet it could not conceal the wounded man's sharp brows and starry eyes, a noble, handsome figure. After taking the medicine, the man on the ground showed some improvement. He forced himself to sit up, his gaze gentle as he asked me, "What is your name, young lady?" I wish to repay your kindness in the future. I had reached marriageable age, yet I was raised in seclusion. My father disapproved of me appearing in public. But in the brief moment of hesitation, he had already lost too much blood and fainted. This time, I would do it differently. Gazing at the same man collapsed before the carriage, I did not reach for the wound medicine. Instead, I drew the dagger kept in the carriage for self-defense. The dagger's cold gleam reflected in my own icy eyes. I recalled my past life, after marrying into the Eastern Palace, Xiao Ling's countless wrongs and mistreatment. In the end, he personally pushed me from the high platform, letting me bleed to death, a fallen phoenix, dying in agony in his arms. Clutching the dagger, I approached the gravely wounded, unconscious Xiao Ling. Better to strike first, before he revealed his identity, to take his life in this desolate wilderness. As I tightened my grip and thrust the blade toward his chest, the unconscious man suddenly stirred with a will to live, his eyes fluttering open. His gaze turned icy as he seized my wrist with unexpected force. "What do you intend to do?" My expression remained unreadable, my eyes shifting to feigned concern. "Your Highness is injured. I merely wish to cut open your outer garment to examine your wounds and apply medicine." My heart couldn't help but feel regret. Such a golden opportunity to eliminate this great threat, and I failed. But in this life, he will inevitably die by my hand. As the crown prince, Xiao Ling had secret guards following him. They would find this place soon. I lowered my gaze, hiding the hatred in my eyes. Just like the scene from my past life. A few strands of hair fell beside the veil on my face, adding a touch of soft, harmless vulnerability. Xiao Ling's gaze toward me, initially guarded and cold, gradually melted into a complex tenderness. He loosened his grip, allowing me to cut open his outer robe and bandage his wound. As I withdrew my hand, he seized it tightly. The words spoken were almost identical to those of my past life. "What is your name, young lady? Today you saved me. In the days to come, I shall certainly pay you a visit to express my gratitude for your life-saving kindness." I gazed at our clasped hands. Gone was the fluttering panic and bashfulness of deer-like eyes, only a cold, repulsive chill remained. My veil concealed the sneer curling my lips. This time, I spoke before he collapsed unconscious. This servant's name is Xi Cui. Saving you was but a trifle. You needn't dwell upon it. A flicker of shock and surprise crossed Xiao Ling's eyes. He raised his hand, intending to pull away my veil. This sudden turn of events caught me off guard. In my past life, Xiao Ling hadn't held on this long, nor had he ever sought to see my true face. I shoved him away abruptly, avoiding his touch as if he were a venomous snake, stumbling back 2 steps. It dawned on me, perhaps I wasn't the only one reborn. Fortunately, Xiao Ling's shadow guards arrived in time, escorting him back to the Eastern Palace. On the way back, Xian couldn't help but ask me in confusion, "Miss, that injured young master earlier, even from his attire, one could tell he was no ordinary man. You saved his life, such a golden opportunity. Why did you mention Xicui's name?" Xicui was the head maid in my quarters. She was also the daughter my wet nurse brought into the mansion, raised alongside me since childhood. She was practically a second young mistress in the inner courtyard. Yet this very person, whom I regarded as a sister, delivered the deepest, most vicious blow. I offered little explanation, only a faint, mocking smile. Sooner or later, he would have fallen for Xicui anyway. Might as well help them along. You must understand, in my previous life, shortly after I saved Crown Prince Xiao Ling, he personally came to thank me. Xicui, my personal maid, beat me to it and met him first. Xiao Ling fell for her at first sight, probably starting right then. Since I wore a veil when I saved him, he didn't know my face or identity, mistaking Xicui for my benefactor. By the time I reached the front courtyard, Xiao Ling had other urgent matters and had already left in a hurry. He had only arranged the marriage with my father. When I entered the Eastern Palace as his bride, Xiao Ling lifted my veil with high hopes. What he saw was a completely unfamiliar face. To this day, I still remember his furrowed brow, the shock that turned to disgust, and how he stepped back. He pressed me relentlessly, demanding, "Who are you?" "I am to marry the woman who saved my life that day. The daughter of the Bai family." After initial panic and hurt, I regained my composure. I explained to him that I was indeed that woman. Yet Xiao Ling refused to hear a single word. From the bridal chamber came faint sobs. Xicui, one of my bridal maids, covered her mouth and wept aloud. Xiao Ling's attention snapped to her. The joy of rediscovery in his eyes, followed by the regret of realization, as his personally chosen crown princess consort, I saw it all clearly. After that day, Xicui became perpetually distracted, often gazing out the window. She shattered my beloved waist-curved bowl. I merely scolded her a couple of times. Just then, Xiao Ling strode into my palace. His dragon-embroidered robe stood squarely before Xicui. His face darkened as he reproached me, "You've already taken her life-saving favor and married into the Eastern Palace as you wished. Can't you show her a little consideration?" At the time, I didn't grasp his meaning. All I noticed was the strong scent of alcohol on his breath, assuming he was simply drunk. The next day, after sobering up, he immediately demanded Xicui back from me. In the years that followed in the Eastern Palace, I suffered multiple miscarriages, damaging my womb beyond repair. I could never conceive an heir to the throne again. When I entered the palace to pay my respects, even the Empress, who had always treated me with kindness, now looked at me with a subtle shift in her gaze, harshness, disappointment, dissatisfaction. In the cunning palace, over a trivial matter, I knelt for half a day in the relentless spring rain. Finally unable to bear it, I sought out Xiao Ling to pour out my anguish. After a long silence, Xiao Ling took my hand and spoke softly, comforting me, "Whether we have an heir or not matters not. I care not." Truthfully, adopting a child from the collateral branch to carry the imperial bloodline serves the same purpose. Mother is simply too impatient, which is why she presses you so. Little did I know then that his every considerate word was also a dagger to my heart. After tossing and turning sleepless for several nights, I agreed to his suggestion and brought a child from the collateral branch to raise as my own. Xiao Ling's eyes lit up with surprise and delight. That night, for the first time ever, he stayed at my quarters. Had I been wiser, more perceptive, I might have noticed his unusual behavior sooner. Several days later, palace attendants brought the selected child before me. Xiao Ling beamed with joy, praising him openly. This child is plump and adorable, with a full forehead. He stands out among the imperial clan's offspring. The moment I saw him, I felt a kinship. He will achieve greatness in the future. My face was bitter, my smile painfully forced and pale, yet he noticed nothing. Before leaving Xiao Ling's study, I saw Xi Cui. At first glance, I almost didn't recognize her. Her face looked weak, and her body had grown plump, resembling a woman after marriage. Xi Cui, upon seeing me, made no move to curtsy. Instead, she stared fixedly at the child in my arms. Boldly, she stepped forward, attempting to snatch the infant from my embrace. Princess consort, allow this servant to hold the child. My expression darkened. After years apart, she dared to be so disrespectful. Xiyun, who followed me, hissed, "How dare you? What right do you have to snatch the young prince from her highness? The young prince is precious as gold and jade. If you drop him and he gets hurt, could a mere servant bear the blame?" Xi Cui seemed to snap out of it, her expression a mix of reluctance and joy. "This lowly servant begs your highness to take good care of the prince." The royal heir in my arms suddenly burst into tears. I hurried away with the child, failing to notice the peculiarity in her words. Over the next decade, I raised 4 children, one after another, dedicating myself to their care. The late emperor passed away. Xiao Ling ascended the throne, and I was naturally crowned empress. On that very day of my coronation, Xi Cui appeared on the enthronement platform, her pride evident. She stood tall, her belly prominently rounded, secretly wearing the phoenix robe hastily crafted by the Imperial Garment Bureau. Strangely, though her frame differed from mine, pregnant and broad-shouldered, the robe fit her perfectly, as if tailored for her from the start. My entire body trembled, chilled to the bone, and I dared not dwell on the thought. I ordered the palace attendants to strip the phoenix robe from her. Xi Cui tilted her face upward, sneering at me with a look of defiance. I had barely raised my hand. A tremendous force shoved me from behind. I didn't even have time to turn and see who it was. I plummeted from the high platform like a bird with broken wings. Amidst the excruciating pain, my eyes filled with blood and tears as I saw Xiao Ling rushing toward me in panic. His bright yellow robes fell as he knelt beside me. He clasped my trembling, icy fingers tightly. "Sure, Jean, I never meant to harm you, to take your life." It was a moment of desperation. Xi Cui was in the wrong, but she is with child. I only wished to spare her from your harm. The agony silenced me. In my dying breath, I strained to lift my face toward the platform. Above, the imperial children I had raised clustered around Xi Cui. Her gaze upon me held the smug satisfaction of a victor. Looking closer, I saw those children, their gradually unfolding features bearing her resemblance. How laughable! The children I raised with my own hands were all the bastards born from her secret trysts with Xiao Ling. I closed my eyes. Amidst the agony and torment, just before my consciousness faded completely, I heard Xiao Ling's reproachful sigh at my ear. "In this lifetime, you should never, ever have taken credit for Xi Cui's kindness, nor oppressed and bullied her." In that moment, I finally understood, Xiao Ling had mistaken his benefactor. And my greatest mistake was saving him, this ingrate, from the very beginning. Returning from offering incense, I came back to the Bai family residence. I had the matrons from the rear courtyard bring Xi Cui forward to kneel before me. This was our first meeting since my rebirth. 16-year-old Xicui bore a faint resemblance to me upon closer inspection, especially in her exposed eyes. Having lived comfortably in the Bai household, she enjoyed near-master status. My indulgence had nurtured her into a delicate, aristocratic beauty. Xi Cui knelt on the ground, trembling with fear, her lips pressed tightly together. I noticed an enamel bracelet on the wrist where she clutched the hem of her skirt. The enamel bracelets had originally been a pair. One adorned my own wrist, while the other I had placed in my trousseau chest. It later vanished, and I never imagined Xi Cui had stolen it to wear on her own wrist. Coincidentally, this very bracelet was the one I wore when I rescued Xiao Ling. Xiao Ling saw the bracelet on her wrist and thus mistook her for me. Yet in my past life, she had so many chances to explain, yet chose instead to persist in her deception. She had always been my most favored. Thus, when brought before me to kneel, she still defied me, demanding, "This servant knows not what offense I have committed? How have I angered my mistress?" I set down the tea lid I'd been grinding between my fingers, pointing casually at her wrist, stealing from the household, her heart unwilling yet her hands unclean. By family law, she shall be put to death. What? Xicicui's face shot up, her eyes wide with disbelief. Death. I repeated flatly. Why haven't you carried out the sentence? It wasn't just her who couldn't believe it. Every servant in the back courtyard was stunned. I had always treated Xicui like a sister, never once punishing her. And now, over a single bracelet, I demanded her life. Carry out the sentence. Two matrons stepped forward, white silk ropes in hand. Xi Cui tried to flee, but her struggles were futile. I touched my flat abdomen. In my previous life, every excruciating miscarriage had also been her and Xiao Ling's doing. The white robe coiled around her neck, tightening slowly. At first, Xicui cried and begged for mercy, but soon, she couldn't utter a sound. Many servants in the back courtyard trembled in fear, unable to watch. Only I remained calm and satisfied throughout. Cruel? Compared to all her betrayals against me in my past life, what was this? As Xicui lay dying, suddenly, someone kicked open the back courtyard gate. A golden brocade robe flashed past, knocking over two maidservants. He scooped up Xi Cui, delicate as a pear blossom, fragile as if the wind might scatter her, and held her in his arms. Xiao Ling, who had just bandaged his wounds and rushed over to the Bai family, looked at me with eyes full of disappointment. His eyes were red, his gaze fierce. I met his gaze, filled with utter hatred, utterly unmoved. Not a single ripple stirred within me. I had seen that look far too many times in my past life. His voice cracked with anger as he shouted, "Bai Shijin, how could you be so vile?" I knelt before the throne and begged for the imperial decree to marry Xicui as crown princess. After hearing this, I sipped the cold, bitter tea. The chill mingled with bitterness, seeping straight to my heart. He was even more impatient than in my past life. Impatient to marry a servant who couldn't even read a single character. What I must do, naturally, is grant them their wish. Xi Cui is the future crown princess. Whoever dares lay a hand on her again. The rear courtyard fell into stunned silence. Xiao Ling's eyes blazed with intensity as he asked me with a hint of mockery, "Bai Shijin, you've reincarnated too, haven't you? So from the very start, you couldn't wait to lay hands on Xicui." My cold smile remained unchanged, Your Highness's words. I do not understand. Xiyun, standing beside me, couldn't help but speak up. As a servant, Xi Cui has repeatedly stolen from the young mistress. Shouldn't she be punished according to household law? Xi Cui, in his arms, woke just in time. Weak and limp against him, she gazed at me tearfully, pleading, "This servant knows she has erred. I begged the young mistress to spare me this once." She slipped the bracelet from her wrist and returned it to me. In that instant, Xiao Ling's eyes narrowed sharply. Stunned, he stared fixedly at the enamel bracelet. His voice was dry as dust, strained from his throat. "This bracelet. How could it be yours?" Xiyun, baffled, retorted, "Enamel bracelets are precious jewelry imported from the West. Naturally, it belongs to my young mistress. Xicui is merely a slave of the Bai household. Does your highness intend to turn the tables on us?" Xiao Ling's body trembled, the sound of his teeth clenching audible. He asked me, in my past life. Why didn't you explain? Hearing this, I couldn't help but feel amused. Had I explained? Had he even listened? In the end, what could have been salvaged? Our hearts were equally dead and cold. I still remember Xi Cui by his side. Though she held no official rank, merely a palace maid, Xiao Ling treated her differently. During a night banquet in the Eastern Palace, she deliberately tampered with the soup, adding almond powder, a substance Su Liangdi couldn't tolerate. Su Liangdi was humiliated before everyone, her face swelling and turning crimson. Later, she struggled to breathe, nearly losing her life. I merely followed palace protocol and imposed punishment. Xiao Ling shielded her before I could react, his gaze turning icy as he fixed it on me. Everyone makes mistakes. Xicui is new to the Eastern Palace and unfamiliar with many duties. Why must you seize this opportunity to lash out and deliberately make things difficult for her? It was a minor incident, and Su Liangdi is fine. As crown princess, you should lead with kindness and restraint. Being so aggressive will only alienate people further. A bucket of cold water and a barrage of criticism reduced me to the laughingstock of the banquet. As they spoke, the imperial decree granting marriage, secured by Xiao Ling for her, arrived at the Bai residence. Everyone proceeded to the front courtyard to receive the decree. The palace attendant delivering the decree remained unchanged, but the decree itself was different. In my previous life, it had been a decree granting marriage between Xiao Ling and me. This time, my name had been replaced with Xicui. Xicui was merely a servant of the Bai family. Even with Xiao Ling's petition, her status remained too low. Thus, the edict added another decree: our Bai family must adopt Xicui as an adopted daughter, elevating her to the position of second young miss of the household, placing her on equal footing with me. My fingers tightened beneath my sleeves. I concealed my expression, rose, and accepted the imperial decree on behalf of my maid, Xicui. This lifetime, Xiao Ling, who had finally married Xicui as he wished, was now deathly pale. Panicked and filled with regret, he could scarcely lift his head to meet my gaze. "It's a mistake. I made a mistake. I'll explain everything to Father Emperor. Jean, endure just a little longer. Wait for me." Clutching the imperial decree in my hand, I curled my lips in scorn. Can an imperial decree be revoked so easily? Did the crown prince kneel before the Qianqing palace for nothing? Hearing Xiao Ling intended to beg the emperor to recall the marriage decree, Xicui's form swayed, frail as a breeze, and she suddenly collapsed to the ground. The instant she fell, Xiao Ling, who had been standing beside me, immediately rushed forward, gathering Xicui into his arms. Such an instinctive gesture couldn't deceive anyone. Come to think of it, he had cherished Xicui for an entire lifetime. Had he not loved her to the bone, how could he have fathered child after child with her? How could he have schemed to sever my own fertility, only to hang their bastard offspring under my name, inscribe them in the imperial genealogy, and make them true royal blood? This lifetime, not only would I not tear them apart, I would personally send the maid Xicui to the Eastern Palace. Unworthy of such honor, I only brought trouble upon myself. That crown adorned with 6 dragons and 3 phoenixes was no easy thing to wear. The fainted Xicui, her face drained of color, looked all the more pitiful. Xiao Ling held her, his eyes betraying unmasked anxiety. Jean, if you must blame anyone, blame me. I was blind in both lifetimes, mistaking the wrong person. The imperial decree is final. Xicui is now your sworn sister. Never mistreat her again, never treat her as mere servant. With that, Xiao Ling hurried off with her in his arms, seeking a physician. Only at nightfall did Xi Cui return, personally escorted by Xiao Ling. Stepping down from the carriage, Xicui was as cheerful as a sparrow. She carried a brocade box to my room. In the candlelight, she tilted her small face up, timid yet triumphant as she called to me, "Sister. Now, we're truly sisters by marriage." Xian couldn't stand her arrogant demeanor and stepped forward, ready to strike. I held her wrist firmly, my expression unreadable. Xicui opened the embroidered box, revealing the betrothal gifts and rewards sent from the Eastern Palace. "Sister, I come to apologize. I never meant to compete with you for the crown prince. It was the same in my past life." She was skilled at feigning docility and innocence. If Xian went up and slapped her, she'd only fall into her trap. I'd already suffered that humiliation once. The flower-pinning banquet of my past life. Court ladies and noble daughters gathered, and I, the crown princess, was to pin flowers on them and bestow blessings. But Xi Cui presented flowers concealed with hornets. The hornets suddenly flew out, stinging anyone in sight. Startled, I shoved Xi Cui away. She fell to the ground, her arm bleeding, quickly staining her palace gown crimson. In truth, the wound on her arm was self-inflicted, a calculated act to stage a ploy of self-sacrifice. Chaos erupted at the flower-pinning banquet. Xiao Ling, who rushed to the scene, lifted Xi Cui first. He saw the blood on her arm and the forced smile she wore. Xiao Ling's gaze toward me was as cold as evening mist, filled only with disappointment and reproach. He wouldn't even spare me a single word. Back then, I truly cared for him. As young spouses, who doesn't dream of growing old together, sharing a lifetime of companionship and understanding? Even within the icy confines of the palace, at least my feelings for him were genuine and warm. Moreover, having saved his life myself, I longed for him to feel gratitude toward me, to pledge himself to me, just like in the romance novels. It was precisely this foolish sincerity that wounded me so deeply. He didn't speak to me. He didn't listen to my explanations either. Instead, he punished me by confining me to my chambers, forcing me to face the wall in reflection. Xicui is cunning. A mere handful of hornets nearly cost me my position as crown princess. I touched none of the apology gifts she sent. I considered having Xian dispose of them, but feared unnecessary trouble. In the end, I simply stuffed them all into the bottom of a chest. Xiao Ling knelt once more before the gates of Qianqing Palace. This time, he remained kneeling for a full day and night, pleading with the emperor to revoke the marriage decree. He claimed he had mistaken the person. Another had saved him on that mountain path. But the emperor's word was not to be trifled with. He never even saw his father's face, driven away by palace attendants delivering the message. Fallen petals like dreams, drizzling rain like sorrow. Soaked to the bone and looking utterly bedraggled, Xiao Ling waited for me outside the Bai family's ancestral hall. His voice was hoarse. "Jean, could you bear to be my secondary consort in this lifetime? I swear I will treat you well, to make up for it. If you ever desire the Empress's throne in the future, I will give it to you." I waited for him to finish his urgent plea, then sneered, pointing to a small patch of white hemcloth on my collar. He froze. All sound caught in his throat. My mother passed away. For the loss of parents, one mourns for 3 years without changing attire. I must observe this mourning period. I will not marry within those 3 years. My voice was slow and faint as I spoke. In my past life, when mother learned I was to marry into the Eastern Palace, she feared it would delay my marriage. She endured, clinging to her last breath with bitter medicine, suffering for a long time. This life, I stayed by mother's side and saw her off. Xiao Ling stood trembling uncontrollably in the dim rain. Drops of water clung to his lashes. His face was ashen as he murmured, "It wasn't like this in my past life. It shouldn't be like this." My smile held a chill. Life is like a chess game, each move is new. Your Highness, many things are bound to change. For instance, in my past life, I died at the hands of him and Xicui. Who could say, now that this life begins anew, who will be the ultimate victor? Half a month later. Xicui was utterly triumphant, like a sparrow suddenly perched on a branch. I, her nominal sister, escorted her to her wedding. Before stepping into the bridal sedan chair, Xicui feigned 2 tears of reluctance. I truly don't know why His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has such deep affection for me. After all, sister is the legitimate daughter, far more suited to be crown princess than I. She didn't know the reason. I, of course, knew better than anyone. This path, adorned with flowers and drenched in oil, was one I personally chose for her. Since in my past life, they loved each other madly, living in secret, hiding in the Eastern Palace and bearing so many children. I must fulfill their destiny. Let the world see the Crown Prince's choice. And I hope Xiao Ling doesn't regret it too soon. Xicui's tears held a trace of a smile. Sister, I shall never forget your kindness. I withdrew the hand she held without a flicker of emotion. Kindness is unnecessary. Securing your position as crown princess is what truly matters. Xicui was brimming with confidence, showing not the slightest regard for the dignity of the crown princess. Sister, rest assured. His Highness the Crown Prince cherishes and loves me so deeply, he would never allow me to be mistreated in the Eastern Palace. I smiled. The imperial family is the most heartless of all. Soon she would understand this truth. A woman seeking to stand firm must never rely solely on a man's fragile affection. Xiao Ling, clad in dragon phoenix wedding robes for the betrothal procession, remained unchanged from my past life. He sat tall and handsome atop his mighty steed. Yet as he passed through the crowd, his gaze lingered deeply upon me. Even as he helped the bride into the wedding sedan chair, not a trace of joy graced his face. I returned to the Bai residence and ordered the gates shut. I ran my fingers over the enameled bracelet on my wrist. When Xicui was executed that day, I had prepared 2 options: either kill her silently, or reveal the truth of my past life, planting an indelible thorn in Crown Prince Xiao Ling's heart. The one he had gone to such lengths to marry was merely a Bai family servant. Even the woman he had loved in his past life was nothing more than a deceitful schemer who had deceived him his entire life with the pretense of saving his life. Spies hidden within the Eastern Palace swiftly relayed the news. On their wedding night, Xiao Ling rose early, his expression weary, showing Xicui none of the indulgent favor he'd shown her in their past life. When it came time to present tea and pay respects at the Empress's chambers, the Empress, due to Xicui's lowly origins, even her adoption as the Bai family's foster daughter couldn't mask her birth as a servant, made Xicui kneel on the ground. The tea she offered remained untouched by the Empress for a long while. Clearly, she was looked down upon. Had she not been the Crown Prince's life-saving benefactor, and had the Crown Prince not knelt to beg for her hand, would the daughter of a wet nurse ever have been deemed worthy of entering the Eastern Palace? Xicui bit her lip, and tears quickly welled up. Through tear-filled eyes, she gazed toward the figure clad in the imperial dragon robe. Yet since their wedding, Xiao Ling had been perpetually distracted. He hadn't noticed Xicui's pleading gaze, nor had he spoken a single word in her defense. This would never have happened in her past life. In her previous existence, wherever Xicui was, Xiao Ling's gaze would instinctively find her. If she suffered the slightest injustice, Xiao Ling would immediately come to her defense. Xicui's tears only deepened the Empress's disdain for her petty demeanor. The Empress covered her nose with a handkerchief and chuckled lightly. I haven't said a word yet. Why are you crying for no reason? Others might think I've done something to you. The wedding has only passed 1 day, and you're already weeping and wailing. It's nothing but bad luck. You're so ignorant of etiquette. Have the palace ladies teach you some manners. Don't become the Crown Prince's consort and make a laughingstock of yourself. Xiao Ling excused himself early, claiming urgent business. Xicui remained kneeling in the palace, tea tray in hand, for half the day. After reading the note, the icy glare in my eyes remained unmelted. But this lesson alone was insufficient. Far from sufficient. I would make them hate each other this lifetime as intensely as they loved in the last, a love-hate struggle to the death. Wasn't Xi Cui's womb so fertile? 10 years, children born one after another, while mine all perished in infancy. The bitter medicinal broths of the Qing palace, the agony of losing children, it was time for her to taste them. Following the same path as my past life. According to custom, upon becoming crown princess, one must host a hairpin flower banquet, both to showcase imperial status and bestow blessings upon noble ladies. In my past life, she ruined my flower pinning banquet beyond repair. Countless noble ladies were knocked down and stung. Even though I later tried desperately to salvage the situation, it left an abysmal impression among the aristocracy. So much so that on the day I was crowned empress, numerous civil and military officials stepped forward to oppose it. This lifetime, I attended the flower-pinning banquet as Miss Bai, still confined to my maiden's quarters, alongside other noble ladies. Even at her peak of favor in the Bai household, Xicui remained merely a servant. No one ever taught her how to manage household affairs, host banquets, or command an audience. She knew nothing of the capital's noble families or their intricate ties, knowledge gained only through lifelong immersion. A pheasant cannot pretend to be a phoenix. A servant remains a servant. Even ascending to the position of crown princess consort, she could never become a person above others. Even without deliberate sabotage, the flower-pinning banquet was a complete disaster. The dishes had to be arranged according to the family's rank and the status of the noble ladies present. Xicui knew none of this. The flower pins were categorized as flower king, flower fairy. She knew nothing about these distinctions either. In my past life, I had paid close attention to these matters, seeking guidance from Her Majesty the Empress to ensure flawless execution. Conscious of her lowly origins, after being punished, she approached the Empress like a mouse meeting a cat, dare not set foot in the inner palace. The dishes were wrong. The purchased flowers, she didn't know their varieties. The palace attendants served her inferior substitutes. Xicui sat flustered at the crown princess's seat. Soon, murmurs filled the flower-pinning banquet as her status as a servant's daughter became known. Many noblewomen maintained their decorum, finding excuses to leave one by one until most had departed. Xicui watched the emptying banquet hall, the scornful whispers of the noble ladies. Xi Cui's face burned hot. Forgetting her surroundings, she wept bitterly, overcome with humiliation. The flower-pinning banquet was a ceremony designed to showcase the crown princess's status. As the crown prince, he could not intervene. Xiao Ling, seated beside her, frowned in annoyance upon seeing her tears. His gaze swept over the deserted banquet. He flung his sleeves aside, irritated and embarrassed. I sat in an inconspicuous corner of the banquet, witnessing this farce from start to finish. Xiao Ling slammed his wine cup down, murmuring coldly, "In my past life, you were gentle and sensible, deeply pleasing to me. Why in this life are you incapable of anything? Not even a fraction as good as her?" I knew exactly whom Xiao Ling referred to. In my past life, I handled every matter for him, leaving him to simply enjoy the fruits of my labor. Xi Cui never ascended to the position of crown princess consort. Unburdened by administrative duties, she devoted herself solely to flattering him, capturing his heart by feigning obedience and fragility. By contrast, the bedchamber seductive Xi Cui had him utterly spellbound. But this life is different. I propelled Xi Cui into a position never meant for her. With comparison came disparity. Disappointment and resentment now dwelled within Xiao Ling's heart. From perfect match to bitter partners, a slow, agonizing cut. I curved my lips slightly. It's only just begun. After the flower-pinning banquet ended in discord. Instead of cleaning up the mess, Xi Cui dared to come looking for trouble. Her narrow-mindedness truly befits the fate awaiting her. A woman's gaze shouldn't be confined to the inner chambers, nor to petty rivalries. It should be far-reaching, seizing wealth and power. Securing an unassailable position. This truth, I only grasped fully after dying once. A palace maid by her side stopped me. "You must be Miss Bai. The crown princess requests your presence." I followed her to the familiar chambers. The moment I stepped inside, her trusted maid barked, "Kneel before the crown princess." I chuckled softly, "Sister, now that you're crown princess, have you forgotten the Bai family raised you for over a decade? Why not kneel first before your old master to repay the Bai family's kindness? Only then will I kneel before you, my new master." Xi Cui's expression stiffened. She dismissed the attendants before feigning innocence and warmth. "Sister misunderstands. It's those maids who are too fixated on protocol. How could I bear to make you kneel before me?" I presented the prepared wedding gift. "For your joyous union with His Highness, I have little to offer but this necklace, a keepsake from our mother." This very necklace was what she had retrieved from our mother's belongings in my past life to give me. Precisely because it was mother's keepsake, I never doubted it, wearing it daily. Little did I know she'd hollowed it out and filled it with red musk. It caused me to conceive repeatedly, only to miscarry each time. Xi Cui grew up alongside me. Mother treated her with the same tender care she showed me. I never imagined she'd exploit mother to harm me so. When Xi Cui saw the necklace I presented, her eyes reddened. She would refuse any other gift, but seeing this necklace, unless one were truly heartless and treacherous, she would surely accept it. Half a year passed. Xiao Ling, who should have been deeply favored by the emperor, was repeatedly scolded in this life. Rumors even circulated in the palace several times about deposing the crown prince and appointing a new heir. Many of Xiao Ling's memorials and documents were polished by me. Even numerous policies were devised with my counsel. Thus, I helped him secure the crown prince's position early on. But in this lifetime, Xi Cui, who remained by his side, was illiterate. She had no qualifications to attend the clan's academy. Her only skill was that martial art. Whenever she had free time, she would cling to the crown prince and loiter around him. Her own rise to power was tainted, and she could not tolerate other palace maids emulating her to gain the crown prince's favor. To secure her position as crown princess. This lifetime Xi Cui oppressed the palace maids, seizing every opportunity to scar the faces of any with even a hint of beauty. After a concubine's face was slashed, she forbade the imperial physicians from treating the wound. She left it to rot and fester in the scorching summer heat, eventually scarring the skin. Until Su Liangdi, newly entered into the eastern palace, stumbled upon the scene. Su Liangdi let out a shriek, convinced she had encountered a vengeful ghost of the imperial palace in broad daylight. The incident alarmed the Empress. The Empress intervened, sending the disfigured maids out of the palace and paying them a hefty sum to keep them silent, finally quelling the matter. Because of this, the crown prince was reprimanded. Xi Cui was kept in the central palace, kneeling before the solemn and majestic Buddha statue to repent. The Empress had intended to have her copy sutras, only to discover she was illiterate. The Empress nearly fainted with fury, ultimately settling for having her memorize the awkwardly phrased scriptures. Xiao Ling left the eastern palace and arrived at the Bai family's doorstep. His dragon-embroidered robe and the same brocade jade sash adorned him, yet he carried an air of despondency and decay. In the mere half-year since their marriage, he seemed to have lost considerable weight, his eyes crawling with bloodshot veins. Upon seeing me, Xiao Ling was overcome with mixed emotions. I, too, found myself speechless. "If the crown prince has no business here, please do not obstruct my path." As I brushed past him, like a statue, the motionless figure suddenly grasped my sleeve. "Sure, Jean, I regret it." His voice choked with bitterness and struggle. "In my past life, I failed you so many times. I never knew how important you were to me." I laughed bitterly. He wasn't regretting, he was afraid. Only after replacing me did he realize my importance. I was his wife, his minister, managing the Eastern Palace for him, paving his path forward. Without me, he achieved nothing, even his position as crown prince hung by a thread. His lowered gaze held new layers of calculation and resentment. Looking back now, much of what happened wasn't your doing. Others framed you. I wronged you, and caused your death on the day you were to be crowned Empress. What must I do in this life to bring you back to me? His question was hesitant, cautious. Hatred congealed in my throat, turning into green blood. I slowly swallowed the metallic taste, a slow smile spreading across my lips. Impossible. I didn't look back, nor did I care what expression Xiao Ling wore now. I stepped into the carriage and departed. More important matters awaited my scheming. I want them dead. For half a year, Xicui had tried every trick to cling to Xiao Ling, yet her womb remained barren. Born of lowly origins and despised by the Empress, she needed an heir more than anything. A palace maid in the eastern palace mentioned, "There's a divine healer at the temple east of the city. He has a miraculous remedy, a secret formula he won't sell for all the gold in the world. Any woman who drinks it quickly conceives." Desperate for a cure, Xicui secretly committed the words to memory. When she appeared wearing her veil that day, I was not surprised at all, sitting hidden behind the curtain. I listened to her haughty voice, strained with urgency. "Are you truly a divine healer? If I drink your medicine, will I definitely conceive? Mark my words, I come from a noble house. If you dare deceive me, I'll have your entire family executed." The divine physician had seen countless noble ladies and felt no fear. "Madam, your liver fire is too intense, making conception difficult. If you doubt this old man's skill, seek another healer." Xicui stiffened. "First, extend your hand. This old man must take your pulse." After she offered her wrist, she waited anxiously for a long moment before asking, "Well? What's wrong with my body? Can it be treated?" The physician stroked his beard and merely shook his head. "Madam, your body is perfectly healthy. It seems the issue lies with your husband. Why not call him over for a consultation as well?" Xiao Ling, the crown prince, was far too exalted to appear in such a place. The divine physician sensed her dilemma and suggested, "Very well. I shall first prescribe a kidney tonifying, qi-nourishing formula. Take it back for him to consume. There should be a turning point." Xicui inquired about the price. The divine physician held up 5 fingers, 500 taels of silver. "This formula is not shared with outsiders. Consuming it will surely prove effective. Should it fail, Madam may bring men to smash my stall." Gritting her teeth, she went to the palace accounts and produced 500 taels in cash. Only after Xicui departed did I step out from behind the curtain. The so-called divine physician lost his earlier composure and suddenly knelt before me with a thud. "Miss, please spare me this once. I'll leave the capital immediately and never return to deceive and swindle again." Indeed. This so-called divine physician was nothing but a charlatan. After exposing his scam, I merely threatened to report him to the authorities, and he obediently played along with my scheme. I had Xian record his name and household registration, then told him, "I hold all the evidence. Should I ever hear of you peddling fake medicine again, I'll immediately present it to the magistrate and see you spend the rest of your life in prison." Yes, yes. A con artist like him has multiple hideouts, catching him again would be no easy feat. Leaving the temple, Xian fastened my cloak. "Miss, will Xicui really give the crown prince this medicine of dubious origin?" I replied calmly, "She certainly will. 500 taels of silver could buy dozens of servants like her." I deliberately had the divine doctor set an exorbitant price, just to make her wince, to force her hand. Back at the palace, after much hesitation, Xicui dismissed the attendants and slipped the powder into the crown prince's tea. Dawn was breaking. Xian rushed to report the news. "Miss, your foresight is uncanny. Truly remarkable." Still half asleep, I asked, "Trouble at the Eastern Palace?" "Yes." Xian's face flushed with excitement. "The crown prince is vomiting blood incessantly. His life hangs by a thread." Cui's poisoning was discovered. She's been stripped of her title as crown princess consort and thrown into prison to await trial. After her initial excitement, Xian grew anxious. Mademoiselle, will they trace it back to us? I gazed out the window at the breeze rustling the duckweed, smiling calmly. They won't. They can't even catch that fake doctor. After 3 rounds of interrogation and severe torture in the dungeon, Xicui finally confessed to buying the poison from outside the palace. By the time the officers went to search for the wandering doctor, the temple in the eastern part of the city was already deserted. When they questioned the locals, no one knew the doctor's whereabouts. Finding him would take years, and even then, the case might never be solved. After several sleepless nights of treatment by the imperial physicians, Xiao Ling finally regained consciousness, his life saved. Upon learning Xi Cui had drugged him, his face contorted with fury. Veins bulged on his temples as he raged, cursing her a vile woman. On the day of her execution, he personally escorted her to the execution ground, overseeing the punishment. 2 lifetimes of deep affection. Nothing but a mockery. Xiao Ling came seeking me again. This time, he appeared as lost and forlorn as a stray dog. Xi Cui's poison had been potent, the imperial physicians had pulled him back from death's door, but not without leaving lasting consequences. The once-spirited man now bore strands of prematurely gray hair at his temples. A newfound ingratiation flickered in Xiao Ling's smile. He drew a wax-paper parcel from his robe. Poria cake, your favorite. I taught the cooks the recipe and made these myself. Fresh cuts marred his hands. This was his way of begging my forgiveness. Sure, Jean, eat while it's warm. Judge my skill. I picked up a piece of the pure, translucent cake but did not take a bite. In my past life, to keep him by my side for just 2 more days, I had secretly studied cooking for a long time. Every day, I waited for him to return, serving him steaming hot soups. How was the lotus seed and pigeon soup? He paused, then realized I was asking about our past life. Xiao Ling nodded repeatedly. Your cooking was exquisite. I finished every drop, only to regret I could never taste it again in this life. His final sigh was filled with genuine sorrow. I couldn't help but chuckle. You see, I had never once made him lotus seed and pigeon soup, because he disliked the subtle bitterness of lotus seeds. As one might imagine, the meals I painstakingly prepared, the clear soups simmered over the small stove, all ended up in Xicui's belly. No wonder she was so well-nourished in the Eastern Palace. Recalling the past, Xiao Ling's eyes reddened. His voice choked as he asked me, Sure Jean, if I hadn't mistaken my benefactor, could we have shared a harmonious marriage? Wouldn't we have become a legendary imperial couple, our story immortalized in history? I remained silent. Mistaking his savior was no excuse for his neglect of his own consort. How could one place hopes in such a heartless man? Amid my silence, he nearly wept. Sure Jean, I regret it. I've regretted it for so long. In this life, you saved me. Why did you give the name Xi Cui? Why didn't you reveal your true identity? Why did you make me miss you again? He actually murmured his reproach to me. I chuckled softly, Your Highness, you and Xicui have children and grandchildren. You even allowed her to wear my imperial robes. Your devotion to her runs deep, how could I not grant her wish? Xiao Ling's face flushed crimson, then drained pale. After a long moment, he murmured, That was all in a past life. I've already made her pay the price. Forgive me! Without you, I've realized how desperate my situation is. Can you help me one last time? I can grant you the title of Crown Princess. I stared at him intently for a long moment, then laughed. Very well. Xiao Ling's face lit up with joy. I knew it! In the entire Eastern Palace, across 2 lifetimes, only you have ever been sincere with me. That vile Xicui stole the credit for saving your life and deceived me for an entire lifetime. I've already had her thrown into the mass grave, to be devoured by wild dogs and maggots. But Xicui's life alone was hardly enough. It still couldn't dispel the bitterness and rage burning in my chest. Suppressing my nausea, I offered him a plan, mentioning the locust plague that would soon strike. In my past life, the fertile lands of Jiangnan, after a long drought, were ravaged by locusts. If your highness personally transports grain to Jiangnan to aid the victims, handling every task yourself without delegating, you will win the people's hearts and restore your image in the emperor's eyes. I spoke slowly. As Xiao Ling listened, his eyes grew brighter. Finally, he clapped his hands excitedly and exclaimed, "I remember now. Yes, yes, yes. A locust plague is imminent. I shall prepare immediately." Watching his eager figure depart, a smile as cold as a blade formed on my lips. In my past life, I had poured my very soul into orchestrating these very events for him. Yet this fool Xiao Ling, merely by briefly appearing under the scorching sun to placate the masses, was already complaining bitterly, disgusted by the stench emanating from the disaster victims. Soon he couldn't resist crawling into his tent, seeking Xicui to massage his stiff muscles. In my past life, I lifted him to the heavens. This life, I will send him to hell with my own hands. I tied the written secret letter to a passing lark and sent it soaring into the sky. Go. Tell your master, the crown prince has fallen into the trap. 3 months later, just as in my past life, Jiangnan was struck by a sudden locust plague. The people reaped nothing, barren land stretched for miles. As the ministers stood helpless, Xiao Ling stepped forward. He claimed he had a dream where an immortal foretold the disaster, so he'd stockpiled grain, perfect for aiding the victims. The emperor, delighted, ordered him to transport provisions to Jiangnan immediately. Xiao Ling personally escorted the grain to Jiangnan. Bags of millet filled 100 ox-drawn carts. His face beamed with confidence, achieving this feat would cement his position as crown prince beyond challenge. Open the sacks and distribute the grain. The order rang out. As the coarse hemp sacks were torn open, what spilled out was not grain or rice, only weeds and sand. Displaced villagers had come with their families, hearing the crown prince had brought vast supplies to end their hunger. Who could have imagined the sacks held nothing but inedible sand? Cold sweat instantly drenched Xiao Ling's imperial robe. How could this happen? I personally watched them load rice. Who replaced it? Before he could process it, starving refugees erupted in chaos, breaking through the soldiers' blockade and surging forward. This riot was only quelled when the crown prince's uncle, the Prince of Huai, arrived with his troops. He ordered the distribution of porridge and grain to resume. The strong received less. The elderly, women, and children received more. Peace finally returned to Jiangnan. The crown prince, missing since the uprising, was delivered to me by Prince Huai. The sack was opened, and the unconscious Xiao Ling collapsed before me. I lifted a cup of cold tea and splashed it over his face to rouse him. Sure. Jean? Upon waking, Xiao Ling saw me as if I were his savior. Sure, Jean, aid me once more. This time, I shall succeed. You will save me, won't you? Through 2 lifetimes, you never abandoned me, aiding my ascent to the throne. Just let me return. I'll immediately name you crown princess. He had lost the dignity and bearing of his past life. Fear rendered him pitiful and lowly, crawling groveling before me in utter ugliness, begging for my help, begging to be released. I merely made a gesture. The 2 guards by Prince Huai's side effortlessly hauled him up, dragging him like a dead dog onto the city ramparts. The view from the ramparts was superb. The evening breeze brushed the strands of hair at my ear. Unfortunately, Xiao Ling had no interest in appreciating the night scenery. His lips trembled as he slurred, asking me, "Sure, Jean, why? Did you bring me here? Were you trying to surprise me?" I leaned close to his ear, smiling. Just as he had in his past life, whispering sighs of reproach into my ear. Is it a surprise that I'm sending you to your death? Bye, Sure, Jean. You can't. I've already admitted my mistake. What good is admitting a mistake? Do you think one sentence can erase a decade of pain and humiliation? The despair of falling from the city wall, bleeding dry? Push him down. Don't let him die too quickly. Make him fall 10 times. Let him taste the terror of plummeting from the wall. Let him feel his bones snap and dislocate with every fall. Screams pierced the night sky, until the ground below was soaked red. I watched coldly. Only when the body lay motionless after the final fall did I report back to the Prince of Hui. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, fearing punishment, took his own life by leaping from the city wall. This ruthless, cunning, and ambitious Prince of Hui stood with hands clasped behind his back, gazing at me for a long moment. Then he suddenly asked, "Miss Bai, would you consider becoming my consort?" Without hesitation, I replied calmly as still water, "I refuse. But I demand a written pardon from the Prince of Hui himself." I needed assurance he wouldn't seek my life once he ascended the throne. His thin lips curved in a low chuckle. "Fortunately, you are my ally, not my enemy." It was that fool Xiao Ling who couldn't see what was right before his eyes. That night, I left the Prince of Hui's tent. Xian waited for me in the carriage. "Miss, everything has been prepared." I glanced up at the night sky, the wind stir across the 9 provinces. Chaos will soon engulf the land. Years later, the frontier was in turmoil, and the rivers and mountains changed hands. On West Lake, a small flat-bottomed boat drifted slowly out from beneath the deep willows. Warm spring light fell upon her sleeping, serene face. A light boat crosses distant mountains, a person on the path resembles jade. The story ends here. Thank you for reading. The next chapter will be even more exciting.